All right, this is the entry to the coverage tip of the day series, and it revolves around a coverage called hired and non-owned auto liability, where the hired is coverage relating to a vehicle that was hired by the company to do business for the company. It could be, let's say you have a sales guy traveling out of state, flies in, rents a vehicle to go visit customers. Or let's say you have 6 delivery vehicles, 2 are down, you need to get product to a customer. So you go on hire delivery vehicles. Your people are driving them for the company on company time, but it's vehicles that are rented. That's the hired portion. The non-owned portion is any vehicle that's owned by another entity or another person individually, but they are doing business for the company using that vehicle that's not titled to the company. That's where you come in with the non-owned portion. And that could be either a coverage on your general liability policy as an endorsement, but more than likely, the insurance carriers are going to issue an auto policy that has only hired and non-owned auto on it. That's where confusion comes in, where people are like, why do I need an auto policy when I have no covered autos? Well, in order to have this coverage, which is a very, very important coverage, it's so important where we at One Digital will not sell policies without it on there in some fashion, whether it's on the general liability or it's on the auto liability policy, without a signed form that says, hey, I completely understand what higher non-owned auto coverage covers, but I still do not want to spend the $500. Sometimes this is as cheap as $250 or upwards. Bigger companies, you might spend $1,000 or $2,000, but for the most part, you're talking $500 on average for higher non-owned auto liability coverage. Have them sign off on it, absolve us from any responsibility because we did tell them they need it and they decided on their own not to take it. That's how important this is. And I'll tell you, here's a situation as to why we had this occur. This goes back, I don't know how many years ago. Construction company, a client. They're based out here in the suburbs. They needed to get stuff downtown Chicago, some papers, some documents, and material to the guys downtown Chicago. Well, everybody either were off of work because it was a weekend, or they were on the job site or at other job sites. So the owner went to his son. He said, hey, I need you to take all this stuff to the guys downtown Chicago. And there are no company vehicles on premises, so use your own. So the son got in, vehicle title to him in his own personal name, got in his vehicle, was driving downtown Chicago. And the setup on this one was where if you imagine this, you're driving down a Chicago street, all these cars parked on both sides, a lot of vans on this side, and there were also trees with the leaves. So the driver, the son who was driving the vehicle, could not see the stop sign. And there's a pedestrian coming across. He, because of the trees and because of the vans, could not see him driving. So he's driving along. Here comes a pedestrian and hits the guy and kills him right there. So that was, of course, the son is personally responsible, and it goes on his own personal auto policy. But the attorneys, because this guy, he was mid-30s, making a couple $100,000 a year, had a lifetime, another 30 years of earnings coming out, and the attorney involved said, hey, well, what were you doing in your vehicle? Because wise attorneys, they'll figure it out. Why was the vehicle there? What was the purpose of the vehicle being in that spot at that time? And it was like, they said, look, I was running an errand for the company, getting stuff down, material and all that down to the guys downtown Chicago. And so, of course, that comes in now because on company time with a non-owned vehicle, that's the non-owned auto liability. So the carrier came in. Not a whole lot to defend in that situation because you hit a pedestrian and killed a pedestrian. Well, they came in, the claim ended up being about $5 million total. They had a $1 million auto policy. They had a $5 million umbrella, and then the cost of defense and putting everything together ended up being $6 million total. Total claim, $1 million, $5 million umbrella, $6 million check was written. Nothing out of the pocket except for the insurance premiums, because after that you're going to have a large claim on your policy. But besides all that, it did cover a $6 million claim. So that is the importance of this coverage, because you just never know. You could be sitting there one day, hey, I need someone to run a Menards. We need another hammer. Hey, John, can you run to Menards, go get the hammer? Of course, boss, I'll go run to Menards and get the hammer. I'll take my own vehicle. Boom, hit somebody, cause an accident, company will be responsible. That is the coverage. Very, very important and very, very highly recommended.